Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing great. So today there is a great news. Along with our DevOps bootcamp, now we will start putting lot of projects which you are going to build in your companies. This project is almost similar to that. Of course, we are not having multiple nodes set up in Kubernetes cluster, but all concepts and everything which we are going to learn here is going to be used in industries. But a mini version of our Kubernetes cluster, that is Minikube, we are going to run the Kubernetes in the local environment using Minikube. What is exactly Minikube? So Minikube creates a single node Kubernetes cluster on your machine. This is great for development and testing. So we are going to have our own setup of local Kubernetes cluster using Minikube. Now, to interact to your Kubernetes cluster that is using Minikube, we need some command line tool, and that command line tool is kubectl. So you have to install kubectl, you have to install Minikube and Docker. Docker is a platform that enables developer to automate the deployment, scaling and management of applications using containerization. So we have to make sure Docker is installed in our system. So if you have to install Minikube, you have to follow here the links mentioned, and these links will help you to set up your environment. In our system right now, we have the components installed, but I'll show you that how exactly this can be done from your system as well. So you have to go to this Minikube site, and once you log in there in this Minikube, you can set up your environment. So first, let us copy the link and see how exactly the Minikube setup can be for the Windows system. So for Minikube in local is a local Kubernetes cluster. You have a command to start is called Minikube start. What is needed? 2 CPU, 2 GB of RAM, 20 GB of free disk, and internet connections. And any virtual machine manager such as Docker, QEMU, Hyper-V, Parallel, VirtualBox, or anything. So if I have to install in Windows, architecture is x86-64, stable type .exe download. So we have to just click here on the download button, and you see the download is done, like Minikube installer is done. Now next thing is we have to add the Minikube binary to your path. So we have to add this PowerShell command we have to run to add the Minikube to our path, and then we can just run the Minikube start command. So let us log into our command prompt, and I'll show you here. So clear the screen, and here if you see, I can check Minikube if it is running or not running. So I did Minikube status. Right now you see I have Minikube already configured and running. If suppose I stop it and it's a new machine setup, so I assume that it's in the stopped state. So right now I am stopping our Minikube setup, and then from the beginning let us start this Minikube. So now if you will do Minikube status, it will show you it is in the stopped state. Now again do Minikube start, and it will start your Kubernetes cluster. So here you can see Minikube version 1.30.1. We are running on Windows 11. Now it is trying to restart it using Docker. And here you see which version of Kubernetes, version 1.26.3 on Docker 23.0.2. So it is preparing our Kubernetes environment on a single node Minikube cluster. While it's preparing, let us go through the further content of slide. So once Minikube is installed, the next step is we have to install this kubectl. What is kubectl? Kubectl is a command line tool which will help you to interact to your Minikube cluster or any Kubernetes cluster. So here we can go and then we can install this either using curl in Linux box or the another Windows systems also will have. So like these are for Debian and Red Hat systems. Similar way, we have all the steps mentioned here. Just we follow the official document. So here you can do, and here you have the option uh, on Windows system. So you can just buy a direct download or curl command or using Chocolatey, Scoop or Wingit. So we can use any of the options to install Minikube and kubectl. So kubectl will be installed. Meanwhile, you see our Minikube is already ready. So if you see, it's already ready now. If I want to see kubectl is there or not, so I can use kubectl, and you see kubectl command is running, means kubectl is already installed in my system. You can just follow this official document and you can install kubectl. It will be almost only 2-3 steps to finish the kubectl setup. Now, if I want to see how many nodes are there in my Minikube cluster, so I have to run the command kubectl get nodes, and you can see I have a Minikube cluster ready. Control plane is only single master, and then its version is 1.26.3. That is the Kubernetes version which we are using. So our Minikube setup is ready. Now, what will be the next step? So next step is for starting the Minikube, as I told, Minikube start command. That will help you to start, and then kubectl get node command to see the nodes in your system. Now, what is our target? What exactly we are trying to achieve through this project? So we want to create a Flask application. You might have a question in your mind, what is Flask? So Flask is a lightweight web framework for Python that allow developer to build web application quickly and easily. Like suppose you want to develop a website and you want to run that website as a microservice on your Kubernetes cluster. This project is going to help you to do that. So what is Flask? Flask is a web framework for Python. Here you can build the web applications, and how the directory structure in Flask looks like. So in Flask web applications, generally we will have our Python code like app.py. So it serves as the entry point for running the applications. When you execute Python app.py, it initializes and start the web server. And then we'll have a Docker file. A Docker file is a text file that contains series of instructions to build a Docker image, and it defines how to set up application and its environment inside a container. So in this project, the first step we did, we installed Minikube. We installed or understood how to install kubectl. Then we verified that Minikube is running fine or not. We checked how many nodes are in my Minikube cluster. Next is we have to create a Flask application. So first thing will be create a Python code app.py and one Docker file which will help us to write a series of instructions to build Docker image and then deploy that image in our Kubernetes cluster. So first let us understand our code. So we have folder Flask web applications, and in this we have a file called app.py. What is the code? It's very simple. Few lines of code we have just written here. Just understand what is this. So we have written from Flask import Flask, or you can use directly import Flask. So Flask is a Python module, or it's a Python library which we are importing in our code because this code is going to build a Flask web applications. And then we are just writing app is equal to Flask curly braces underscore name underscore. Now app route, this is a normal syntax, and inside that I am telling define home, and in the home I am telling return hello. This is the message which I want to show on the home screen. That is hello, welcome to DevOps Tech Stack real projects. And then inside the main function, what I'm telling run this app.run on host 0.0.0.0 and port is 5000. in your company, of course, you will not run it on 0.0.0. Since it's a local setup, we are making it in secure way. But for better security in companies, we have to define the specific host where we want to run these Flask applications. And then which port it will be running? On port 5000. Now, this is my simple Python code to show on the home page, like this message should be printed on a web page. Now, this Python code name is app.py, but how to build the image of this Python code and deploy it in our Kubernetes cluster? So for that, first see the Dockerfile. So for Dockerfile, we have very beginning that is called from keyword. Like we need a Python image having Flask installed on it. So we got a Python image tjsx/foosball hyphen flask 0.1.0 version. This is one of the Docker image which has the Flask installed on it. Once we have the Flask installed, so from keyword we exactly connect to Docker Hub and it will download this image. After that, where you want to perform all the work. So work directory is /app, where we are defining our work directory. Now, in the same folder, I have app.py. So this code, I am telling copy app.py to my current app folder / in the work directory app folder. And after that, I am telling how to run the code. Now, once code is copied inside the Docker image, cmd command is helping us to tell that you have to type Python and then app.py. It will run your applications. Now, once my application is running, which port it should be running? So I'm exposing the port 5000 and I'm telling here my application needs to run. So this is very simple Docker file. First step we are doing is we are downloading the Flask image. Then we are defining the work directory. Then we are copying the Python code into my work directory. And then I am using the cmd command of Dockerfile and running the Python applications. And then I am exposing the applications on port 5000. So now you understood your app.py code and you understood the Dockerfile content. Now, you have to build the image. And how we can build the image? So to build the image, you have to type the keyword docker build -t for tag flask -app dot. So let us try this. So if I go here, sorry. So here I come in my command prompt and then here we can do docker. What is the command? So docker build -t, docker build -t flask -app and then dot means here in the current path, just build it, the image using the Dockerfile image. So if you see the image building is in progress and you can see image building is done. Now how to check image is built or not? Docker images is the command to see the image. So you see 10 seconds ago, I have a image with tag latest here flask -app. You can see this, right? Now I want to tag this image and then push this image to our Docker Hub. Docker Hub is, this is our private Docker Hub and Docker Hub account details is Kritika Jha 94. So in this ID, our Docker Hub is there. We have to just push that Flask web applications now. So first create the tag related to your repository. So Docker tag and then flask-app and then where we have to tag with the repository name. So Kritika Jha 94 /flask-app and whatever the image tag you want to attach. Right now I want to attach 1.1.1. So I'm telling this version, let us attach it and then I have to log into Docker Hub. So Docker login and it will ask user and password. But since I logged in past, it's already login succeeded. And then you have to push the image. So Docker push and then your repo name. So Kritika Ja 94 slash flask hyphen app flask hyphen app colon 1.1.1. So now it is trying to push this image to Docker Hub. Once the image is pushed to Docker Hub, we can use this image anywhere and deploy our applications using this image. So let us see. Meanwhile, we'll go to our Docker Hub and we'll see if our image is coming here or not. So you see one image came here few seconds ago and it has the tag already 1.1.1. Few seconds ago this image came. Now you understood. So here you see image is pushed now. So now once your image is pushed, next step is we have to deploy this Kubernetes application now using this image. So how we can deploy? Using kubectl command we can deploy. But before deploying, understand what all components we have to write in Kubernetes for deploying this Flask applications. So let us go to our code. And here you see there is a file called deployment.yml. Let us understand all the components of it. So the first component is kind is deployment. Means I want to deploy these applications and deployment is one of way in Kubernetes using which you can deploy your applications. So I am telling my API version is app/v1, kind is deployment, metadata. Metadata means information about your applications. So it's a Flask app. In the specification, I am telling one replica of my application you have to deploy. And then selector, we are telling that use this flask hyphen app as a selector. And then we have the actual spec sections where we are defining our image. So name is flask app and image is flask hyphen app 1.1.1 1.1.1 and which port? 5000 port. Now this will create a deployment. But once deployment is created in Kubernetes, to use that deployment or to access that deployment, we need service. So now we are creating a service and that's API version is v1, kind is service, metadata is Flask app, node port. Here you see one type is node port. So there are three types of services mainly used in Kubernetes, that is node port, cluster IP and load balancer type of services we use. So now the most important concept comes is what is exactly node port? So node port is a type of service which help you to expose your applications to the external world. Like my application is running on port 5000, but this 5000 is inside the Docker container or inside your machine, Minikube. But if you want to expose it into the browser, you have to use the service node port and node port is exposing it on 30001. So this will help you to expose your applications to the outside world. Similar way, the cluster IP service is there, which is used for internal communications. So, and then load balancer type of services we have in a lot of places like AWS, GCP, Azure. These event services, if you define your service type as a load balancer, it will automatically expose your applications using load balancer and it will deploy a load balancer in your public cloud directly. So now you understood why node port is used to expose your applications to outside world. And then as a selector, I'm telling select my Flask app. And why Flask app? Because my container app name is here Flask app. So I hope you understood why service is needed to expose your applications and then deployment is to deploy the actual image in your Kubernetes cluster. So now just save this file and to deploy it, you have to type a command called kubectl apply -f and then deployment.yml. So it has, you can see you got a message here and let us see what message. Deployment is created and service is created. How I can validate that? So you can run a command called kubectl get deployments, and you see Flask app is deployed using your code, and within 15 seconds before, means within 15 seconds it got ready, and then qctl get service. Here you see our Flask app service, which is of type node port, is already exposed to port 3001. Inside the container, it is 5000, and then it is exposing 3001, and it's 28 seconds before it has been created. So now you see you have your deployment and service ready. Now how I can see it in browser? So in companies, instead of this cluster IP, if you use the load balancer type, you can directly use the load balancer IP address and directly go into the browser and see the applications. But since it's a local computer, we have to expose this service in our, somehow to expose it into browser. So for doing that, you have a command called Minikube service and your app name. But before that, let us see pod is getting deployed or not. So kubectl get pods. Once we create the deployment, it created a pod. So pod is the smallest object in Kubernetes, and pod is already deployed. Now, once you see this, you can use this Minikube service Flask-app. So if you use Minikube service Flask-app, so what it will do? Sorry. So Minikube service spelling is wrong. So Minikube service Flask-app, and what it is telling, now it has exposed it on our browser, and here you see hello, welcome to DEVOPS-TECHSTACK real projects. So now your application is exposed and you can access it in browser. In companies, instead of this local IP address, you have to use the load balancer IP, or if it has a domain name like www.devopstechstack.com, some kind of domain, then you can expose it using domain as well. But this is one of the way to expose our applications. I hope you guys understood this project. In coming projects, we are going to have the backend database also deployed on our same cluster, and slowly will increase the complexity of projects. And I can guarantee that if you follow these tutorials and do these exercises practically, finding a job or switching your job is almost very easy, because in companies, only instead of doing everything in these local infrastructures, just to use it servers and deploy there. But almost all these concepts are same. If you understood these conceptually and done it practically, nothing is going to be different in organizations. So I hope you guys got fair idea how to deploy any Python applications or Flask applications using our Minikube setup and exposing it into the browser. Stay tuned for more interesting projects related and extending the functionality of these projects in coming videos. Thank you so much guys for giving your valuable time. Have a wonderful day ahead.